talking about, no.
Oh.
I'm talking about your idea is like the hokey pokey or the hokey cokey, because it's like you put your left arm in, left arm out. That's what I was talking about.
And I just changed it to croaky in my mind, which made sense with the frog.
Hokey croaky.
Hokey croaky.
No, it's not the hokey croaky.
And so we digress yet again.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, sign up for more support with meeting your needs with your weekly Universal Needs Notes at theuniversalneeds.com.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
I am really looking forward to tonight. Like, it's the first night in a while that we're actually going out, and we're going to go out and try to do something we've been trying to do for months. Go and see our friends perform. Should be good though.
Yes.
It's gonna be...
I was like, what are we doing? I know what you're talking about. Yes. Not even for months. Let's be honest.
Oh, like, yeah, probably years. Yeah.
It blows my mind sometimes how you can live in an area and it's like you get
a tiny area. This island is 2 miles by 4 miles wide. I mean, it's not like it's a big island.
Mm-hmm. But going down, like, if it's not your area, like, I live, like, I think I mentioned in a previous episode, I live on a different island technically. And it's like getting off that island for me. She's really, yeah, she's really one of the few people. Like, I have very few people that are like, oh, why don't you come downtown? I'm like, how about not? Like, you really got to entice me with something. But we've been trying to do this for a long time. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes,
it's gonna be fun.
Super excited.
Gonna be fun.
We should get like flowers or something.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Because they just came back from their trip too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yay. So it's going to be a fun night. But before we get to there, we have a very important podcast to record.
Yes.
Because as we mentioned in the last episode, obviously in the last episode, we were talking about like how if you don't pay attention to your needs when they first start talking to you, they're going to get louder and louder and louder and louder. The thing about it is that you don't have to wait for your needs to start talking to you in order to meet them. I mean, yes, that's a good indicator. Like if they're talking to me, yep.
They need to be met.
I gotcha. I hear you. Yeah, we'll get on that. But the reality is that we can proactively meet our needs. And the interesting thing the thing that actually prompted this thought for me was when Serena was talking about generally in terms of like health and wellness and how most people relate to their health. And it made me think about the fact that a lot of people wait until there's something wrong to take care of their bodies, to take care of their well-being. It's like both of us go and see a regular massage therapist. And a lot of people wait to go to a massage until they're in pain. Like that's part of our proactive taking care of our health and well-being thing.
Well, it's funny because I used to fall into that, oh, massages are self-care and it's a nice thing to have and it's a treat. And our massage therapist is a very talented physio. I mean, the things that she knows about the body is amazing. And she's like,
I'm not sure she technically qualifies as a physio, but she's like, because she's a personal trainer and she's a sports therapist, like she knows my body way, way, way better than not only I do, but anyone I think I've ever met has, like in terms of being a professional person to take care of it.
And she was the one that actually told me, she's like, stop referring to this like it's kind of a nice,
like a luxury
to have. She's like, this is part of your preventative wellness. And I'm like, shit, you're right.
The interesting thing is you're like, oh, I used to think about them as self-care. They are self-care, because what is self-care? Self-care is nothing more than meeting our needs. And proactively meeting our needs is even better than waiting and listening when they first start talking to us. So if we get there ahead of that conversation, then we're ahead of the game.
Or even worse. I mean, let's be honest, when it comes to our own health and wellness, there's often times we're like, yeah, I hear you, but and we ignore it until we very, very rarely, I think, that are we even taught to, like, when you hear the little, hey,
yeah,
hey,
do we listen to that? It's like,
no. Do we listen? We wait till it's like...
But it's like, no, come on, I can keep going. Like, we can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, da-da-da-da. Like, again, and we're getting our value need met in that. Because it's like, oh, look at how great I am. Like, had this thing for a while now and I haven't got it taken care of. And look at me. And it's like, that's not a good idea.
Oh, like waiting until I have to go through a chemo treatment for skin cancer.
To do skincare. Preventative, like sunscreen. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something that a lot of us do. Mm-hmm. And so as much as it's important to listen to our needs when they're talking to us and when they first start talking to us, obviously we want to listen when they first start talking to us rather than when they start shouting, screaming. We want to listen to the feather. We don't want to wait for the brick in the truck. Mm-hmm. And it's possible to take care of our needs proactively, and it's preferable to take care of our needs proactively. If we can get into the habit of taking care of our needs proactively, that's when all of a sudden everything changes. And this doesn't just apply when we're talking about sort of generally our kind of day-to-day needs meeting, although it does apply to that intensely and it is very important and very relevant. This is something I've often seen happen with I cannot tell you the amount of times I've had this conversation with potential clients. And I remember one client in particular said to me, we were having we'd had a discovery session where which is a kind of low interest. It's not low interest, it's high interest. So it's low cost introductory session where you kind of find out more about me and I can give you a bit of like, here are the starting points for where you're at and the things that I would suggest you focus on in order to move forward. I remember she'd had the discovery session and we talked about her working with me. And there was one moment where she said to me, she went, I don't really need it right now. And I said to her, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to be really clear with you. What I am saying to you now is in no way any attempt to try to convince you to work with me. If you're not meant to work with me, absolutely take that decision. That is the right thing for you to do. I do think it is really important to point out to you that what you mean is I'm not in crisis right now. And a lot of people don't ask for help or support. They wait to ask for help and support until they're in that crisis point. And there's a couple of reasons. The first thing is they don't really feel like they need it until they're in that crisis point. It's like, oh, well, things aren't terrible. Like, things are just kind of shit. Like, it's like, yeah, hold on a second. Even if things are okay, you can still improve them. Like, you can still get support to go from, okay, things are all right. And I actually remember one of the clients who went through one of our test groups. She kind of came into it going, I don't really know how this is going to help me because I'm in a really good place. And she was in a really good place in her life. She came out the other side of it flying. I mean, she was like, oh my God, this is the most incredible thing ever. And everyone needs to do it. It was such a beautiful experience seeing somebody who went from good to amazing, not just, oh my God, struggling to good.
And she was a light. Like,
yes.
I mean, and that's where she was. It was just boom. And when she went through the program, it was like, whoa. I mean, it was in the most beautiful way.
Right, absolutely. So the first thing is that a lot of people feel they don't need that help until they hit that crisis point. The second thing is that a lot of people don't feel worthy of help until it is a matter of survival. And people don't feel worthy of that help of like, oh, I'm struggling a little bit. Let's get to the point where I'm not struggling anymore. Or I'm not struggling at all. Let's get to grey. They have to wait until, oh my God, I'm at the bottom of the hole. I've hit rock bottom and 6 feet further down. Mm-hmm. That's the point at which I need to get some help. And the thing to remember is that you are worthy of help and support every step of the way. You are worthy of having your needs met proactively. Because the thing about it is that the biggest issue with this approach is that if you reach crisis point, it was normally because there was something that needed to be addressed beforehand. There was something that normally creates the crisis point. And yes, there are life situations that will maybe amplify those things, but quite frequently, in order to get to a crisis point, there's something ahead of time that's trying to get your attention that you're not really paying attention to. Now, the issue is, if you wait until you're in crisis to meet your needs, if you wait until you're in crisis to get help and support, you end up actually having to just, that whole thing becomes about dealing with the crisis. It's not about the thing that created the crisis in the first place. It's about recovering from the crisis, but it's not about healing the issue that sparked the crisis.
Because a lot of times when people, they get in the crisis, they take care of the crisis, and then they keep moving forward until they're in crisis mode again. It's again that yo-yo.
Like, I go to crisis. Oh, I'm out of the crisis. I'm back to crisis. I'm out of the crisis. Because the thing that is causing the crisis, which is normally some kind of systemically unmet need or combination of systemically unmet needs, are still not being taken care of. So it's like, okay, we'll dig you out of the crisis. We'll help you to get out of the crisis. But the thing that caused the crisis is going to cause the next crisis and the next one and the next one and the next one. The thing about it is, if you get support along the way, oftentimes the crisis can be completely avoided. Mm-hmm. So if you actually deal with the thing before it becomes a crisis, it never becomes a crisis in the first place. If you meet the need before it gets to crisis point, it never hits crisis point. If you shift the behavior that is heading you in the direction of crisis because it's a habit you've got around unmet needs or the relationship you have to your needs, and you address it at that point, the crisis gets completely averted. Sorry, I've got some bug that's like flying around my nose.
Oh, I thought you were averting the crisis.
I am averting the crisis, I'm averting the bugs, everything's getting averted right now and never avoided. And the thing about it is, even if the crisis can't be completely avoided because it's something to do with, as I said, like a life event or something that you have no control over, it will mean that you are better resourced, which means the impact of the crisis on you, on your body, on your system, on your life will be significantly lessened. And that's one of the things that most people don't understand is that it very much, actually kind of preventative physical healthcare is a really good example of this, because we can see, okay, if we physically take care of ourselves, we proactively take our supplements and eat food that's going to be supportive to our bodies, and we do movement that's supportive to our bodies, and we get massage and the various things that are like preventative wellness, what ends up happening is that we don't end up getting to those healthcare crises in the same way. Or at least if we do hit a healthcare crisis because there's a diagnosis that comes in that we weren't otherwise expecting, our bodies are better resourced to be able to deal with that crisis, to respond to it, to navigate through it, to heal from it, or just to process, navigate through life within the context of that crisis. But if we don't do the preventative stuff and we wait until the crisis, normally we're not just dealing, like, we've got to deal with the crisis, the diagnosis or whatever it is, but we're also at the same time trying to undo the bad habits and behaviors that got us to the point where that impacted us as severely as it did at that point in time. And that's a great example of, like, this is the same true with our emotional needs, with the needs that relate to our inner well-being, the needs that relate to our relationships and those sorts of things. If we're not proactively taking care of those and being aware of, like, what are the warning signs and how do we avoid the warning signs? How do we go, okay, maybe this is a pattern. I've seen it so often where people, they've got this pattern around relationships maybe. And it's like the focus is on the fact that I've got this pattern around relationships. I'm going after a specific kind of person. And that's my habit, is I go after a specific kind of person. And then I get into this really toxic relationship, and the relationship gets blamed on the toxic person. Don't get me wrong, the toxic person is still toxic. Mm-hmm. And absolutely is something that should be dealt with, averted, avoided at all costs. But the thing is, if they end up then ending that relationship, and then what they do is, because they haven't shifted the habit or behavior around it, they go looking for another person who's exactly the same as that first person. I used to call them groundhog relationships, where you do the same thing over and over and over again in relationships, and you're wondering what's happening. It's because the relationship isn't the issue. There's a habit or behavior that you're engaging with, or something that you are looking for that is actually in some way compounding the situation that you're in. Whereas if you address that, then all of a sudden that pattern and behavior shifts. Same thing with when it comes to wellness, thing when it comes to needs, same thing when it comes to actually getting any kind of support, help, coaching, mentoring, those sorts of things. So many people, and it was such an interesting experience because I remember that the client I had that conversation with, she also said to me, she's like, I don't think I can justify spending that amount of money on myself. And I was like, okay, again, I'm not talking you into this. I'd like, if you like, do not make this decision because of what I'm saying. You have to make the decision because it's the right one for you. And it's important for me to just point out here, is that a question of you not believing you're worthy of having money spent on your well-being and on your mental, emotional well-being? And I remember she was like, oh. And I said, and she was like, actually, I think I do want to go ahead. I said, no. I said, I'm not signing you up today. It doesn't matter what you say today because I want you to go away and think about this. I don't want what I've said to you today to trigger. And so she said to me, she said, okay, eventually a couple of days later, she said, could I split the payments over 12 months? And it was when I was doing a fixed amount of sessions, and you could spread the payments over as much as you wanted to, and to make it financially viable, which we still do. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, yeah, of course. Like with the package that we were talking about, the package that I offered at the time, I said it will just mean that you end up doing a session every 7 or 8 weeks rather than every 1 or 2 weeks. That's absolutely fine. You'll still be making progress, and you can take the time in between to integrate and apply the things that we're talking about. No problem. So she said to me, okay, we'll do that. She said, but I do want to get started straight away. So she said, can I pay a little bit more up front so I can do my first session immediately, and then we'll do it split over the 12 months after that. I was like, perfect, fine, no problem at all. So she went through the first session, and she got to the end of the first session. She went, oh my God, Claire, she went, this is the thing that I have been looking for my entire life. She went, I want to do all of the sessions. I want to do it at least once a week. I want to, and she went, I want to do each one. I want to be the first one to go through your teacher training when you do it. She went, blah, 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 and I was like, whoa, hold on a second. I thought the finances were a challenge for you right now. And she said, it was the fact that I didn't feel worthy of spending that money on me and my well-being versus the things that I must be spending that money, or the things I should be spending that money on. I said, okay. I said, I'm more than happy to do that. And that's actually what she did. She went through, and it was funny because I remember she said to me, I think it was, she said, I've spent like 55 years of my life waiting for this. I'm not waiting another year to go through it. And that was the moment at which I realized that she got that she was worthy of doing this work for herself, and she didn't have to wait until she was in a crisis point. Because the reality is, if she'd waited until she was in crisis, the context that the work we did together would have been in, it would all have been framed around the crisis, not around actually what it was that she was needing and wanting. What were the patterns and habits that she had in her life, and how did we shift those into a direction? And I remember not long after she finished the program, she sent me a text message with a cup of coffee in a park and her with a big smile on her face. And she sent me this message saying, she said, thank you, Sharon. I'm happy for the first time in my life, thanks to you. And I responded, actually, no, you're happy for the first time in your life, thanks to you. You're the one who did the work. I'm just a guide. Like, it's up to the person, the individual, to actually apply what we talk about and to make the shifts and changes for them. And it was such a beautiful experience where somebody was so resistant to taking care of themselves and their needs proactively. And then all of a sudden they realize, hold on a second, this is actually about my self-worth. And I don't feel worthy of doing this proactively. And so often that's what ends up happening with everything in life, where it's like, oh, I'm not worthy of having a massage every week as a preventative wellness thing. It's something that I can only justify doing when I am in pain,
or as a treat because I need or want a treat.
Yes, because it's my birthday, or because it's it's my vacation or something. It's like, it doesn't have to be a treat. It also doesn't have to be a crisis. And the thing about it is that we want to encourage you to focus on what is it that I need, and giving it to yourself before you get to the point where the needs even start talking to you. And it's okay if you're not there yet. It's okay if we're a ways from that, because I know that Serena was a ways from that when she started off with the program. I know I was a ways from it when I started doing this work. It's like, oh, proactive? Well, like I'm lucky if I'm doing reactive. Like,
from the massage perspective, and I also want to note there's a lot of privilege in us being able to do this.
Yeah.
I had done the program when I became aware of preventative wellness as a thing, because it just hadn't been, that specific thing hadn't been framed in that way for me, so I didn't even identify with it.
Yeah.
But it took me a while, and I was like, it was a couple of times where she was like, you know, you're hesitating on the next appointment, and it's like, well, it's expensive to do this, and it wasn't that I didn't have the funds to do it, is I didn't think that I was worthy of spending this every single week to do this for my body. And now I can't imagine not being able to do that.
Right.
And if it's not, you know, me going to get a massage, sometimes it's me doing self-massage.
Right.
And it's stretching. I mean, I would stretch when I got stiff. And I got stiff because I wasn't stretching regularly. So when I'd stretch regularly, all of a sudden I didn't get as stiff. Like,
right.
I am worthy of those couple of minutes to stretch my body for myself. It didn't matter that I had this to do. I can 5 minutes.
Well, and the thing about it is that sometimes it's about finding the ways of doing that fit within what your schedule looks like with what your life looks like. The interesting thing is that before we're going out tonight, I have someone coming round. I'm in the process of learning Spanish right now. Like, that's one of my priorities at the moment. And when she's here and we do Spanish together, I will often, both of us will sit and stretch while we're learning Spanish. It's like, oh, that's something I can do for myself. And yes, I'm still learning Spanish. It doesn't stop me from learning Spanish. It doesn't inhibit my brain process whatsoever. But what I'm doing is I'm like going, oh, okay, I need to stretch because my body is asking for that. Where can I fit that in? So it's like a lot of the time people will like listen to podcasts or audiobooks when they're driving somewhere or when they're walking their dog. So it's like, how can I do this in a way where maybe I don't need to find extra time? Maybe there's a way of me doing this in alignment with other things that I'm doing where it's not giving me more to do. I'm just getting a little bit smarter in terms of my use of time. And I know that's been a big thing for me, is like, how do I integrate these things in without feeling like I'm giving myself more to do? And that's one of the big things, like when we talk about the fact that in terms of meeting our needs, everything you do every second of every day is done to meet your needs. The reason that we say this is because we want people to understand you don't need to do more to meet your needs. It's not possible to do more to meet your needs because you're doing it every second of every day. It's not about doing more. It's just about understanding the decisions and the choices around meeting your needs that are going to fulfill your needs more rather than deplete your needs. And the Spanish example is a great example. Like, I didn't need to do more in that time. I was already meeting my needs. Hold on a second. I could meet other needs at the same time without needing to make more time in my day. Hold on a second, this is a whole new concept. And it really was. It really has been for me. And I like listening to podcasts. I used to listen to them when I was out walking. I was walking because that was something that felt good for my body. It got my body moving. It got me kind of like in motion. It was a form of kind of stretching and strengthening and everything. And then it's like, hold on a second. I really like podcasts. I really like learning. That's something I can do while I'm walking. Like, let's look at how we can get these things working together, and not in a way where we're kind of overwhelming ourselves, where it's like, oh God, I've got to do this and this and this and this and this at the same time. It's like, is there a way that I can bring this into something I'm already doing, which won't add extra pressure, but actually it will make use of that time and space in an even more effective way for my needs.
And it will make you feel good. And that's the thing. If you try to add something in and you feel like you're pushing through it, or it's not feeling in alignment. Like if she was stretching while she was doing Spanish, and then all of a sudden the Spanish she was focusing on it wasn't working. It's like, okay, well,
that doesn't work.
That doesn't work. And now I know that doesn't work. And I feel like something that we kind of get into is, waiting for that crisis moment. Think of when you're in crisis. Like, a lot of times it's kind of like a freeze moment where you're like, oh, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go forward. You're like, you're wrapped up in it. So the thought of being in crisis and then taking steps forward to fix it or do, something to help. That's really hard. And it makes you feel like, because there's so much back that led to this crisis point, you kind of need to go back to the beginning to then take that first step. And if you're not in crisis and taking those steps, you can take those little steps, those
Much
little
easier.
baby steps, and then it builds, and then it builds, and then it builds, and then it builds, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow.
Look at me, I'm running.
Yeah, like, look at what I just did. But when you're trying to build from crisis mode, like, it looks impossible.
Well, the other thing is, like, on a recent podcast, we were talking about capacity and how what we've got the capacity for in any given moment is what we need most at that moment in time. When we're in crisis mode, our capacity normally is completely drained. Like, when we're in crisis mode is normally a form of it's a form of a combination of trauma or traumas that are all happening at the same time. And what that means is it's going to be impacting multiple of our needs. Normally a crisis is not just one need. Sometimes it can be one need very severely being affected, but a lot of the times actually it's multiple needs being affected. And if multiple needs are being affected, our capacity to be able to do stuff, like, because the extent to which we have capacity is the extent to which our needs are met. So if we're in crisis and therefore our needs are being impacted, our capacity, the amount of resource that we're going to have is going to be very, very small. So if you wait until you're in crisis to try to make change, to try to move forward, chances are the amount that you'll be able to move forward because of the amount of capacity you have is actually going to be really, really small. You're not going to have enough resource in the tank to be able to be very effective in this. And normally it's about kind of, in my experience, when someone's in crisis, it's almost like it's like how do they just about crawl over the line out of the crisis. And it's like, okay, I'm sort of out of the crisis. I'm mostly out of the crisis. And like, that's where you're at. That's not a place that feels good. But if you're in crisis, it's obviously better than being in it. That is forward motion from where you are. But if we can get to the point where we avoid that crisis entirely, we avoid that level of impact to all of our needs, to our well-being, to our self-care, to our self-worth. Oh my goodness, that's a much preferred path for all of us.
Absolutely. And then the last episode, I did say absolutely.
Look at that.
We were talking about in the Absolutes podcast that absolutely is not normally one of those things I say. So
I think you might pick that up from me.
Possibly.
Along with many other things, niggles included.
Yes, definitely niggles included. And there it goes. It will come back. Yep. Well, shit.
Talking about the lack of capacity and lack of resource.
Yeah.
When you hit crisis.
I feel like it was really profound.
It normally is when it disappears. That's my experience. It's like, damn it, that was a really good one. I'm pretty sure. I think maybe we'll discover it was if it comes back.
Yeah, I'm just gonna you go about your podcast, and I'm gonna sit here and think for a second.
Oh, okay. I'm going about my podcast all by myself, apparently. So, and yeah, I mean,
oh,
yeah.
Wow. This is
it's the hokey pokey, or if you're in the UK, the hokey cokey of
it's different
ideas.
in the UK.
It's called the hokey cokey. It's not the hokey pokey over there. It's the hokey cokey. Yeah.
Wow.
You heard it here first, people. It's like it jumps in, it jumps out. It jumps in, it jumps out.
So like a frog?
No, I'm talking about
Oh,
I'm talking about your idea is like the hokey pokey or the hokey cokey because it like you put your left arm in, left arm out. That's what I was talking about.
And I just changed it to croaky in my mind, which made sense with the frog.
Hokey croaky.
Hokey croaky.
No, it's not the hokey croaky.
And so we digress yet again. What were we were talking about?
I was talking about capacity and about how if you're in crisis, because your needs are compromised, your capacity is less because your resource.
I got it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we talked about in the last episode, we focus. You have it, Serena. In the last episode, we talked about the feather, the brick, and the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, I think there's a lot in between the feather, the brick, and the truck. Like Absolutely. It might be a feather, then a feather pillow, and then, a foam pillow. Yeah, there are a lot of things in between there. And a lot of people get to the brick and they're like, well, the truck is I'm never going to get run over by a truck.
Right. Yes.
And it's not going to happen to me.
Exactly.
It's not going to get to the point. No, I'm not going to get to the point where I can't move because I've ignored this for so long. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get to that point. And everything's kind of jumbled together. I don't know if it was this episode or the last episode. I was talking about my own journey with weight loss. And one of the things that kind of stood in my mind, which should have been truckish for me, is a family member I was very close to passing away because of their obesity.
Their lifestyle choices.
That was never going to happen to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to die from this.
Yeah. And that whole "it's not going to happen to me" thing is one of the things that it's like, it's fine. I'll be able to cope. Like, it won't get that bad. And that's the thing, is that we underestimate how intensely life can drop us on our ass.
And how bad it can be. Like, going back to the skin cancer thing, like, I wasn't shocked when I got the diagnosis. And in the past, I would have said, yeah, I probably have skin cancer, and still go out without proper coverage and sunscreen.
If you'd known what it actually involved.
So, well, and I had a higher pain tolerance than most. I have experienced, like, the cancer wasn't the triggers. We've spoken about on our social media pages and stuff. But once I got there, fuck, that was hard.
Right.
I never thought it was going to be that bad.
Right.
I thought I was going to get there at some point, or that I may get there. But I was like, I can handle it.
Well, and that's the thing, is that obviously often we don't think about what the reality is of that crisis point. It's like, oh yeah,
I'll deal with it. If it comes.
If it happens to me, I'm sure I'll be able to deal with it. But we don't think about, what is the actual reality of that going to be like? What is the impact to us and the people around us? And what is it gonna mean for our day-to-day lives? How is it going to change and affect things? I mean, I'm going to be really honest. Like, I didn't even know topical chemo was a thing before you went through the process. I certainly didn't know what the physicality of that, the physical experience of that was going to be like. And obviously, I don't know what the physical experience was, but I was very close to it. So I've got some idea, probably more than most do, what that experience was like. Never would have occurred to me in a million years that would be what that would involve.
Well, and for me, it was like, oh, they'll just burn it off. Like, I was going to have the easiest route possible if it did happen to me. It's like, oh, and then it will be done. And when they were like, no, topical chemo, I'm like, oh, what's that? Because I really didn't know that either. Right. Like, not in that, like, this is what it is. This is what it's going to do to you. And then it happened to me. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
I could have prevented this.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that a lot of this does tend to come down to our self-worth. And a lot of it is like believing and recognizing that we are worthy of having our needs consistently met. We are worthy of feeling well in our bodies to the extent to which our bodies are able to do that.
We're worthy of taking the time to do these things for ourselves. And we're worthy of, when it is applicable and possible. Like, for me, one of the things is like the quality of things that I was using, like the quality of my sunscreen. Oh, I'm not going to pay this much for it because I can just get it cheaper. And it's like, is what I'm getting what I actually need?
Right. And it's like, I'm worthy of, and again, like, recognizing that there is privilege in what we're saying, in the fact that we are able to spend money on these things. We are worthy of having money spent on our well-being. Yes. And that's the thing, is that it's, yes, we have the ability to do that. That puts us in a very privileged position compared to a lot of people. And everybody is worthy of having money spent on their well-being. Everybody is worthy of not having to get into a crisis to get help and support. And how our systems are set up is that that's not how it tends to operate. That's one of the reasons we need to change our social systems, so that that is the experience that other people have. It's the experience that we all have, is that we get the support we need to live happy, healthy, whole, fulfilled, just experience of life that is fulfilling. and that is not compromised and is not, we don't have to wait till, a lot of people wait until that rock bottom moment to kind of springboard off of. And there's nothing wrong with people who've done that. And what if we didn't have to wait to that? What if we didn't have to get to the point where our needs were chronically unmet in order to start taking care of them? And that's what we're talking about here, is that you are always worthy of support. You are always worthy of help. And you don't have to wait until you're in crisis to get that support and help, or to reach out and ask for it. And that's what we're talking about. And you don't have to wait until you're in crisis to start to take care of yourself and your needs.
To take the little steps that will help in the future.
And help avoid the crisis.
And those little steps can actually, they might feel little to you, but in the concept or the framework of what you're dealing with, those might be huge strides.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They can make a huge difference. So I think that's it for today. Anything you want to add?
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. We hope you found this helpful. I know this has been a game changer for both of us, that we will reach out for support in ways that we probably wouldn't have done when we began this process. We hope that this inspires you to do the same too. So stay safe, and remember, between now and next time, to keep meeting your own needs. Lots of love.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard
and would like to see some of Serena's awesome facial expressions,
check out the video podcast on YouTube.
And remember, you are worthy of proactively taking care of yourself and your needs.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.